Joe Hill, you have made a new fan. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to A Skeleton's Library. Today, I'm going to talk about the new work by Joe Hill, King Sorrow. This is the first work I've actually read by Hill, though I have owned the Lock and Key series for some time now. I'm definitely going to check out Nosferatu at some point, especially after reading this. King Sorrow caught my attention with its premise. A young scholar is roped into a bad situation, and out of desperation, he and his friends do the impossible, summon a dragon to help take care of it. A Faustian deal with a dragon that's also set in a version of our world, and not a completely new fantasy world? I just cannot resist being intrigued. This book really does deliver on it too. It feels like an epic spanning genres, settings, and decades. You'll get some fantasy, some thriller, some horror, college campuses, to airplanes, to black sites and troll caves. It even covers the rise of technology and the internet, and this takeover and blending of the new world and old. Joe Hill really makes use of all that time, and the 900 pages too. So much of it being character work. You really become part of this friend group at the center of the narrative. I'm generally going to avoid comparing Hill to Stephen King too much, as I'm sure he gets that enough. But this book really does feel to me like it's a grand epic of a group of friends dealing with a creature that spans decades. King Sorrow feels like the natural evolution to something like it. To go back to the friend group, I really liked most of the characters. It takes the time to really flesh them out, particularly with two of them. It really feels like a deep character study into their psyche and why they are the way they are. This did a lot of work in making me care about them and being invested into their fates. These are such complex and broken characters for the most part, that change and grow in both good and bad ways. You cannot help but get invested. Even one of the characters I hated, I could not help but understand to a frustrating degree. Hill put so much time into characterizing and showing why she is the way she is. He does this with another character too, that really makes her feel like the soul of the friend group, makes you feel so much sympathy for her. These two really feel like a masterclass of characterization to me. One, I couldn't help but understand even though I immensely disliked her as a person. And the other, I felt so much sympathy for that she was the character of all of them I really hoped wouldn't die, as she felt like the soul of the friend group to me. It's not all good though. With how much great characterization there is in this book, it makes the weaker cases stand out more. Start with, in a book full of complex characters, the beginning antagonists are cartoonly evil, to the point it almost feels out of place. There's nothing redeemable or understanding about them. I assume this is mainly so the reader blindly sides with the friend group, and has no reservations about them summoning a dragon. But I just think these antagonists are in the book long enough that Hill could have at least sprinkled a little bit more complex characterization in there, perhaps touching on the cycle of abuse, so that after the dragon is summoned, we maybe at least start to understand the characters a bit, even if we don't feel bad for them at this point. Speaking of lack of characterization though, there are two friends in the main group who bother me, one much more than the other. With the one, she's kind of the opposite of the problem I just stated with the beginning antagonist. She's just kind of so perfect that she feels bland compared to all the complex characters around her. This makes her interludes and chapters at least interesting to me because I'm not going to learn anything new. I'm not going to have an internal conflict of understanding her while hating her like I did with some of the others. It's not that big of a deal. I just thought it made her interludes drag on a bit compared to everything else in the book. And I get why she is this way, with her being like the anchor point of the novel and the friend group. I just found her to be far and away the most uninteresting character of the friend group. Now, the other friend is probably my biggest problem with the novel, and a lot of stuff involving them just did not land for me. There's a lot of twists involving them that just do not feel like the character they were earlier in the novel. And my biggest issue is I can see how they got to that end point, but it feels like I'm missing a piece in between. Once again, In a novel full of very well fleshed out characters, two being particularly incredible, this friend just feels like we missed an integral step in his characterization. Even in his POVs, it does not really feel like the same character as early on in the novel. The stuff with him just does not land, and it left a sour taste in my mouth at points. Especially when we do get one flashback of him back at the beginning of the story, and we can see them having eternal conflict and not wanting bad things to happen. Again, I can see them getting to this endpoint, but then there's another twist involving something bad that they did that would have been right around the beginning of the story, in that flashback we saw with this internal conflict. So it clashes where I don't know if he got corrupted by power over time, or if he just wiped away all that internal conflict instantly. There's points where the book clearly treats him like a sociopath, but then shows us him having feelings that don't line up with sociopathy. He just feels like the most sloppily done character, without the clear path trajectory that everyone else had. And it really disappointed me, as he was one of my favorite characters early on. I get what this character ultimately ends up representing, but I just wish it had been done better, or not at all, as I feel like any narrative twist or outcome involving him could have easily been done in another way. Now let's get to the titular monster of the book, King Sorrow. He really is a whole lot of fun, and brings a lot of life to this book. He reminds me of a mix of Pennywise and Freddy Krueger. Pennywise, with his deep mythology, terrorizing the friend group, and the way grief and fear are like seasonings to him that make his meals better. Then Krueger, with his wit and taunts. He will cheekily make a remark as he scares someone half to death. Then you sprinkle on the top some dry British wit, and you get King Sorrow, an oddly vulgar and cheeky dragon, here to burn you alive. I like the way dragons are characterized in this book. It brings out their more serpent-like quality by making them tricksters who also like riddles. And I like the way that adds to the novel with like characters can make riddles with King Sorrow, but it often leads to much more worse outcomes than they would like. And it adds a more mischievous side to these giant, destructive creatures you picture. The way this plays into the narrative also adds a much more sinister side to King Sorrow. Unlike someone like Pennywise or Krueger, who torment and tease the groups they are after, but are ultimately still directly going after them, the way King Sorrow plays with the main friend group in this story is more passive, aiming to tear them apart through psychological attacks, manipulation, and trickery. He's still ultimately trying to kill some of them, particularly one of them really, but he tears them apart through false promises and trickery. He really is the Faustian devil of old in dragon form. With how much fun he is, I do wish he was in the story more. Especially with how many decades this story spans, I feel as if there were a lot of opportunities to see more of him. Though even without those moments, you can still feel him towering over the narrative at every moment. He really is this giant looming in the background that you can feel in every single page. It is funny though that with 900 pages, one of my wishes is that I had more time with certain characters and the titular antagonist. To get into another complaint, there is a background antagonist in this book that is built up throughout the entire story that ends up kind of just being an in-your-face plot device that shows up for one explosive moment before being gone again. I feel like they should have either had them done more or not had them in the story at all. Honestly, I think some sort of melding between them and the one friend who I think is not well characterized might fix some things. Have this background antagonist be the one responsible for the stuff the friend did in the narrative would have been a way to make them live up to the build-up this antagonist had the entire story. I like the world building here, with it being our world, but fairy tales and such did happen, even if we have moved past them. It has an urban fantasy feel by the end of it. I enjoyed all the dragon nods and language Hill works into his prose as well. It really adds to the feel of the book and aids with the feeling of all these things having been around a long time. We have just forgotten about them. In general, I really like Hill's prose. It feels natural and witty, easy to get sucked into, and his dialogue all feels very real, if a bit cheeky at times. He really shows off his skills here as well, with the different scenarios he puts in the book. Went from horror-like scenes to full-on thriller and spy stuff. He really shows his range of motion, which I found impressive, and really made this book feel like the epic it is. This book's setting is very much a dated piece. Spanning from the 90s to 2020s, it makes it very clear what time it is and how the world is changing, leaving cultural references and commentary along the way. You will see the rise of the internet, 9/11, comments on Elon Musk, and even stuff like literal trolls talking about things like being woke. This is an American epic, and it has a good bit to say. Is it anything new? No. King Sorrow is about violence, war, weapons, revenge, power, friendship, and much more, and how these things affect and corrupt us as people and as a society. He plays a lot with the idea too, with parts of it reminding me of Death Note, if it explored more with its concept. I really appreciate all the scenarios and characterization he does with the idea of King Sorrow and how it would affect the people using it, the people it's used against, and how governments would respond. This is so much more than a story about a dragon. It's an epic about corruption, the rise of technology, and the nature of violence. It's nothing new, but it is a really well done version of these concepts. This is one of those books that is an easy recommendation for most people. No matter what you're a fan of, you can probably find something you enjoy in this book. It is a dragon in its own right, and I would not be surprised if it became Hill's quintessential book. And that has been my thoughts on King Sorrow, and I'll see you next time.